I want a game where one player controls the dungeon, another where attackers physically build the siege, and another where an entire city becomes a manhunt. Why don't these games exist? These are some examples of asymmetric multiplayer games I wish were real. To be clear, I am not a game developer. I have no idea how hard any of these would be to actually make, which is exactly why I'm about to suggest them all confidently. These aren't impossible ideas like Skyrim with infinite quests and a map the size of planet Earth. They're built from genres and mechanics that already exist, they just haven't been combined in exactly the way I want. The thing tying them together is asymmetric multiplayer. I love games where one team is doing something completely different from the other. Asymmetric multiplayer games create stories in a way a normal race or team deathmatch usually doesn't. These are games where the players are not just doing the same thing with different colored outfits. I like when one side has a completely different experience than the other. In all of these, the fun comes from two sides having totally different problems. One side is improvising, hiding, building, or escaping. The other side is hunting, defending, reacting, or trying to shut the whole thing down. Stuff like Dead by Daylight, where 4 players get to be me after I got in trouble at school, and 1 player gets to be my mother holding a shoe. Or Among Us, where players have completely different roles and objectives while being pitted against each other. That's what I like about asymmetric multiplayer, the tension and confusion. One team might look completely overpowered, but half the time they're just as confused and nervous as everyone else. Some of these games almost exist already. One gets the roles right but not the scale, another gets the theme right but has the wrong objective, so I'm going to pitch 5 games, show the closest existing examples, and explain what each one is missing. Starting with a game that sounds like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, except I want the racing part taken out almost entirely. The idea is a game called High Speed Chase, and it's essentially cops and robbers in cars. The entire match takes place in an open world, so the pursuit can move anywhere from crowded city streets to back roads and open countryside. The robber's goal is to get a certain number of points to win. The points can be gained in a number of ways, not limited to gaining distance from the cops, doing tricks/jumps, driving fast, driving close to other cars, changing roads, and driving into oncoming traffic. The point system is important because it forces the robbers to keep taking risks. If they just park under a bridge and wait, they aren't winning. They have to keep driving dangerously enough to build score, which also gives the cops chances to catch them. For example, let's say that the robbers escape into the countryside to get some distance from the cops, only to realize that they aren't earning enough points out there, so they need to drive back into the city where there are more obstacles and the cops can more easily catch up. The cops, on the other hand, win by forcing the robbers to stop for 10 seconds before they hit the score limit. Maybe the cop does a pit maneuver, or the robber's car breaks down or gets stuck in traffic, or they get it stuck off-roading. Anyway, the robber's car comes to a stop for a certain amount of time will result in the cops winning. There are similar games to this already, such as Grand Theft Auto, or as I mentioned before, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, which is the closest. However, while Hot Pursuit is probably the closest existing game and is extremely fun, it is fundamentally a race with cops in it. My version removes the racing part. The chase itself is the entire match, and winning means either escaping long enough to reach the score limit or physically stopping the robbers. Most importantly, the cops can actually pit them, which is somehow missing from that game. Now that I think of it, this is basically Need for Speed Hot Pursuit with elements from GTA 5, but I would still play the hell out of it.
This thing is over.
The next game is one I call Siegecraft. In it, there are 2 teams. One team plays the defenders inside a castle, while the other plays the attackers building siege engines outside. The gameplay is a mix of first-person medieval combat and real-time siege engine construction. The attackers win by breaching and taking the keep. The defenders win by holding for a set amount of time or destroying all the siege engines and materials for building them. The attackers have to decide how they want to break in. After all, the king wants the castle taken by Friday and is refusing to approve overtime. Do they spend the materials on a battering ram and go straight for the gate? Do they build ladders and spread the defenders thin? Do they try to build a catapult further back and slowly break the castle from a distance? Unfortunately, the king would never approve a second catapult. Way too expensive for his ROI. Meanwhile, the defenders can see this happening and have to decide what to prioritize before the siege engines are finished. They have archers and mounted ballistae, which I just found out is apparently the plural of ballista, to shoot at the attackers and their builders. They can repair broken sections of a wall or launch attacks outside of the castle or destroy the siege engines before or after they are built. All the while, the king is standing 10 miles away sending letters with extremely unhelpful directions. The fun would come from both teams being able to see the other side's plan forming. So for example, let's say the attackers begin building a battering ram at the main gate, causing the defenders to all move there and try to destroy it before it's built. Meanwhile, a small contingent of attackers decides to quickly rush a patch of undefended wall and build a ladder before the defenders notice. They begin to scale the undefended wall while the rest of their team is trying to assemble a battering ram under active arrow fire with no instructions and several pieces left over. The closest game I could find for the siege gameplay is something like Medieval Machines Builder. However, it's similar to a number of games. Chivalry is the clearest example for the combat, but even a game like Mount and Blade Bannerlord or an RTS like Stronghold is in the same vein. Chivalry makes me the defenders fighting on the walls, while Medieval Machines Builder gives me the physical construction. What's missing is a multiplayer game where those things are happening against each other at the same time. The next game is called Blackout Protocol. The idea here is an urban hide-and-seek game set in a city during a total blackout. One team is called the Ghosts, and they are stealth operatives trying to sabotage key facilities without being seen. The other team is called the Wardens, and they are heavily armed, but they are working with limited visibility. The Ghosts win by sabotaging 6 facilities and reaching an extraction point, while the Wardens win by eliminating them or keeping enough facilities online until time expires. The Ghosts use darkness to enter buildings, sabotage objectives, and disappear before the Wardens arrive. The Wardens are much stronger in a direct fight, but every tool they use to see has a cost. Flashlights reveal where they're looking, flares might eventually burn out, and night vision only works in short bursts. Sometimes the wind might kick some paper up into the air, and a Warden unloads the rest of their ammo into a trash can. A lit street belongs to the Wardens, but the second its generator goes down, it belongs to the Ghosts again. I think what makes this game interesting is that both sides are tense, but for different reasons. The Ghosts are tense because getting spotted could get them killed or expose the rest of their team. The Wardens are tense because they might have all the weapons and armor, but they are still walking around a dark city where they don't know exactly where the enemy is, using precision tactics to enter every room, checking every corner just to find absolutely nothing. The closest comparison I can think of is Splinter Cell Blacklist, specifically Spies vs. Mercs. That mode already had the basic idea of stealthy players versus more heavily armed players, and is similar to what I'm describing. Unfortunately, the online side of Blacklist is almost entirely dead now. Ready or Not also has some of the visual style I want for the Wardens, with the tactical gear, flashlights, and clearing dark buildings. Mecha Chameleon is a lot less serious looking, but it has that hide-and-seek idea, where one side is trying to blend in or avoid being found. Splinter Cell has the asymmetry, Ready or Not has the flashlight and tactical vibe, and Mecha Chameleon has the hide-and-seek structure. What I want is all of that smushed together. I want the whole match to be built around controlling light and darkness in an open urban map, hiding in shadows and manipulating what can be seen and what cannot be seen. The next game is called Overlord's Keep. This is a dungeon crawler, except one player is controlling the dungeon. 4 players are heroes going through the dungeon in first person, fighting monsters, avoiding traps, finding treasure, and trying to escape. The 5th player is the dungeon overlord, playing from more of an RTS perspective. They are building traps, moving minions around, locking doors, casting spells, and trying to stop the heroes before they reach the treasure. The heroes each have different classes and abilities, so one could be a tank, or a healer, or a rogue, or a wizard, or something along those lines. The heroes have to work together to survive, but the overlord is watching them the entire time and reacting to what they're doing. The Overlord is constantly trying to read the players. If the players move too slowly, the Overlord can send smaller enemies in to pressure them. If they rush, the Overlord can prepare a trap room ahead. If somebody keeps wandering off alone, the Overlord can build around that weakness. The cool part is that the dungeon is not pre-made or randomly generated. Instead, it is being controlled by another person who is watching how the party plays. If the rogue checks every chest, treasure can become bait. If the tank always enters first, the next room can be designed to separate them from the group.
Alright, thumbs up. Ready, guys? Let's do this. Leroy!
The Overlord does have limits, though. Monsters and traps cost resources, abilities have cooldowns, and certain rooms need to be protected. Smart heroes can weaken the Overlord by moving quickly or destroying parts of the dungeon before they can be used. Imagine the Overlord wants to buy a dragon, but unfortunately the heroes destroyed one of his resource generators.
Not enough minerals.
So the budget only allows for a skeleton and a suspicious floor tile. The win condition is pretty simple. The heroes win if they reach the treasure and it can escape with it. The Overlord wins if they wipe the heroes out before that happens. The dungeon gets more dangerous over time, so the heroes can't just move slowly and check every corner forever. The closest games are Dungeons 4, Dark and Darker, and Natural Selection 2. Dungeons 4 has the dungeon building, Dark and Darker has the first-person dungeon crawling, Natural Selection 2 has the commander versus ground players structure, but I want the version where the person is actively controlling the dungeon while the other players are doing the crawling. The final game is called Manhunt 24 Hours. While High Speed Chase is built around being noticed, Manhunt 24 Hours is the opposite. The target's best defense is looking like absolutely nothing is happening. This one is a citywide open-world PvP game where one player is the target and everyone else is trying to find them. The target isn't always running. Most of the time they are trying to look boring. The target gets a 5-minute head start to disappear into the city. They can change clothes, steal cars, hide in crowds, use back alleys, break into buildings, and do almost whatever they can to avoid being found. The target also has objectives they need to complete in order to win, so they're not just hiding in a bathroom for an hour. They have to move around the city and take risks. They might need to pick up money, steal certain items, meet a contact, sabotage something, or reach an extraction point. The important thing is that they cannot win by doing nothing. The hunters don't know exactly where the target is. Instead, each hunter has a different tracking tool based on which class the players select at the beginning of the match. One player might have access to drones, another might have license plate scanners, another might have bloodhounds, another might have security cameras or phone tracking. None of these tools gives the exact answer by themselves, but together they give clues. The match gets harder for the target the longer it goes. Early on, they have room to improvise. Later, the hunters have more clues, more roads under surveillance, and fewer places the target can go without being noticed. So the hunters have to communicate. One player might say they found the target's stolen car on a traffic camera. Another might say the dog picked up a scent near an alley. Another might spot someone matching the target's clothes, but not be completely sure.
He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, I think. Maybe the shirt was gray or blue, I don't know.
The whole point is they are slowly tightening the net. The target, on the other hand, is trying to stay unpredictable. Driving fast might help you escape, but it also makes you easier to notice. Changing clothes might help, but only if you can get somewhere safe to do it. Stealing a car might get you across the map quickly, but now the hunters might be looking for that car. Maybe stealing a bright orange Lamborghini wasn't the best idea. Every solution creates a new risk. The closest games here are GTA 5, Watch Dogs 2, and Murderous Pursuits. GTA 5 has the open world city and car chases. Watch Dogs 2 has the hacking, drones, cameras, and online hunter/hunted stuff. Murderous Pursuits has the idea of blending into a crowd while someone is hunting you, but again, none of them are exactly this full concept. What I want is a game where the entire city is part of the hunt, not just a chase, and not just a stealth game, but a long cat and mouse match where the target is trying to complete objectives while the hunters slowly piece together where they are. I think think that kind of mismatch between team objectives and asymmetric multiplayer games creates more interesting stories than a normal team deathmatch or race. Even if the game is not perfectly balanced, the situation it creates are more memorable. You get moments where one side feels clever, the other side feels completely fooled, and then 10 seconds later everything falls apart. Honestly, I think some of the best multiplayer moments come from games being a little messy. Not broken, obviously, but messy enough that weird things can happen. A perfect competitive rectangle where everyone has the same gun can be fun, but it usually does not create the same kind of story as barely escaping a chase, tricking a hunter, or watching your whole dungeon plan collapse because one wizard opened the wrong door. Some of these games almost do it. Some of them are probably way harder to make than I am imagining. And some of them might be terrible if they were actually real, which is the convenient part about imaginary games. They can remain perfectly balanced in my head, and in my head at least, I think all of these would be incredibly fun. Thanks for watching.